as a lot of music listeners are aware, generally speaking, a band or artist will have a golden period of their releases, generally early on in their career before, whatever reason, as they continue on in their career, the albums are just less inspired, and the artist basically is just making albums for the sole purpose of just making albums. So I decided to highlight 10 metal releases from heavy metal, thrash metal, death metal, black metal that were released late into a band's career, theoretically past their expiration date. Who knows? Maybe some of these bands were even retired and came out of retirement and managed to kick some ass. So this list is not a ranking, just going to go in alphabetical order. So we are starting with Accept, Blood of the Nations from 2010. So Accept is a German band, and before this album, they had a lot of albums in the 80s, and obviously the 90s hit, grunge came, that kind of sank the band commercially a bit until eventually in the late 90s, they just kind of dissolved without any real fanfare. So in his retirement years, Wolf Hartman moved to America. I believe he was in Tennessee, either Nashville, Knoxville, something like that. And he decided to have a jam session, just for shits and giggles, just have some fun. And he hooked up with a local vocalist named Mark Tornillo. And after they kept on jamming, eventually Wolf got the idea. He's like, you know what? Let's get the boys back together. Let's start up Accept in the 21st century. So kind of like the German Avengers, the band got back together and assaulted us with Blood of the Nations. And straight away, you knew Accept weren't fucking around. First song on the album, Beat the Bastards, catchy as hell, makes you want to fucking just curb stomp a puppy. You got the second song right after that, Teutonic Terror, the first single I heard from this album, probably my favorite song on the album. But you also have the awesome, Blood of the Nations, the title track, which has like those classic kind of Accept gang vocals in the chorus.
So we drive through the night with the howling wind at our backs, riding on Teutonic Terror. We will give them the axe.
Yep, so this album is produced by Andy Sneap, who maybe you know him. If you saw Judas Priest on tour, he's playing guitar on the tour, but he's also the producer for the latest Judas Priest albums, also produced the latest Saxon album. And he really wanted to work with Accept because he was a big fan of old school Accept, and he felt like when he was listening to the band as they moved on in the late 80s, early 90s, that they were kind of moving away from their sound, moving away from what made Accept so special. So he really just wanted to kind of direct the band in such a way that they would kind of stick to their guns, stick to what they really do well. And, results speak for themselves, baby. All right, number 2, we go to death metal. Cannibal Corpse, Torture, from 2012. Now, Cannibal Corpse is kind of like the AC/DC of death metal. You know what you're going to get on every album, and they've been extremely consistent. I mean, quite frankly, pick any Cannibal Corpse album, post the Eric Rutan produced, what is that, Kill in 2006? I mean, they're all pretty damn good. But for me, I think this album is just a cut above the rest. Get it? Cut above Cannibal Corpse, talk about killing people. This is very sophisticated, highbrow humor, people, okay? That's why you come to this channel. But this album is just chock full of death metal goodness. The opener, Demented Aggression, is fantastic. You got the groovy kind of halftime live staple, Scourge of Iron. And probably my favorite song on the album is As Deep as the Knife Will Go, which just has some of my favorite riffs on the whole album. And another neat little tidbit about this album is the song Followed Home Then Killed, which actually features some clean guitar. Granted, it's very spooky sounding, very effect layered, but still, how often do you hear clean guitar on a Cannibal Corpse album? Number 3, Gorgoroth. What is this? Quantos, POSSUNT, Ad Sanitatum, Trahunt. I don't know. But, I've always rallied against the idea that, black metal peaked in the 90s in Norway and that everything since has just been a cheap imitation. So I'm like, you know what? Let me highlight the example of a classic Norwegian band that put out some good shit well after the 90s had already closed. And the most immediate difference between this album and Gorgoroth's earlier work is the production quality, which has gone up significantly for this album. You know, you compare this to their most revered album, Under the Sign of Hell from 1997, which sounds like it was produced by the sound engineer's deaf-mute intern little brother who had a blindfold on while operating the mixing board. And I know some classic black metal fans are going to scoff at that. They're like, no, the production needs to be necro, that's not cult, da-da-da-da. But look, quite frankly, and you know, this is my favorite Gorgoroth album, despite how shitty it is, but I don't really care how shitty or pristine the production is. Just as long as the songs and the music are good, then that's all I care about. And the songs are absolutely legit on this album. And quite frankly, I think it has two things in common with their other classic, Under the Sign of Hell. Number one, having the incredible Pest on vocals. And number two, having pretty good song diversity. Yeah, so starting with Pest, I mean, that guy is unequivocally in my top 10, possibly even my top 5 favorite black metal vocalists of all time. I just really love the kind of like dry gargle sound that he has to his voice. And I think he uses the best effect when he kind of like stretches out his words. Like instead of saying something like, you know, behold, he'll be like, behold. I'm not a vocalist, but I'm trying. And to speak on the song diversity, you know, generally speaking, that's a trait in albums that I tend to value very highly. And you have a few different kind of like archetypes of songs. Like, for example, you have the opening Scorcher, Anathanasia, or some shit like that. You know, kind of reminds me of like Them Bones from Alice in Chains. Just like a very short, kind of fucking sock you in the mouth kind of opener to start off the album. Then to follow that up, you got the kind of like halftime kind of shuffle feel of the song Prayer. You have the very doomy song Rebirth. And then you kind of have more classic black metal affairs like New Breed and Human Sacrifice. Number 4, Immolation, Atonement from 2017. And I gotta say, Immolation is definitely starting to rise the ranks of my personal death metal rankings. And mostly because they are just incredibly consistent and also have a very incredibly unique sound. You know, if you were to ask 10 different Immolation fans what their favorite era of the band, I'm sure you'll get a good amount that say they like the early stuff. Probably get a surprising amount of people that say, you know what, I think the newer stuff is actually the best. And shit, I wouldn't be surprised if there were 1 or 2 people like, you know what, mid-period Immolation, that's my shit. And of course, there's also their unique sound. And I know I mentioned this in my top 10 death metal bands video that Immolation is traditional death metal, just kind of a little weirder, but not necessarily in a proggy or avant-garde way. And the analogy I'd like to use now is think of like an X and Y axis, where like X-axis is heaviness, Y-axis, I guess, is like progginess / avant-gardeness. Immolation can be found on the Z-axis, quite literally adding a whole new dimension to the death metal sound. Hopefully that analogy made sense. I've always had a very difficult time trying to articulate exactly what it is that makes Immolation unique. I mean, I think it's definitely the riffs are unusual, the vocal deliveries are kind of unusual. But, you know, hopefully if you listen to it yourself, it'll start to kind of make more sense what I'm saying. Or it won't, because I'm just a fucking poser that doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. And the songs that you can listen to for yourself to understand Immolation's sound, my favorites from the album, I would say are The Distorting Light, When the Jackals Come, and Destructive Currents. Number 5, Judas Priest, Firepower from 2017. This was the album that forever changed my perspective on how I approach an artist's discography. So when this album came out in 2017, or whenever it came out, I don't know, I was like 17, 18, and I was a little shit bastard. I was just a total, progressive music and like metal snob. Imagine just the worst of the worst when it comes to like Tool fans or that guy on YouTube, Become the Night. Imagine him being 5 times more insufferable and half as young. My attitude at the time was, I'm not going to listen to the new Judas Priest, man. Like, I need something more extreme to move the needle. Like, heavy metal is old news. Like, maybe they were pushing heaviness in fucking 1979, but, now we got heavier shit. And also, I need more progressive stuff. Like, they're just going to play E minor pentatonic. That shit's been going on since the fucking 60s, Like, why would I listen to this? But I remember, I hopped into the car with some of my other snobby music friends, and, we were listening to a lot of Tool, Meshuggah, even starting to get early on into, like, black metal, Dark Throne, Emperor, shit like that. So when I hopped into their car and they put on Judas Priest Firepower, I was like, huh? But honestly, I was kind of surprised at how much I liked it. The songs are super catchy and kind of heavier than I was anticipating. Had some shredding, had some double bass. Halford still sounded great. Like, this is not geezer metal. These guys weren't cosplaying as their former glories, all right? Judas Priest had fucking business to settle. I expected Halford the Gray, and I got Halford the White.
Like a thief in the night, with the blade held tight. Trapped inside the mind of the spectre.
And I think recently added member Richie Faulkner, who plays on the guitar, really helped kind of keep this album sounding fresh, kind of kept some young blood moving through the veins of Judas Priest. And I mean, just listen to the album, hear it for yourself. Next, KALMAH, self-titled album from 2023, Finnish death metal. Now, I know melodic death metal isn't exactly everyone's cup of tea, but I mean, Jesus, I'm surprised no one talks about these guys, because these guys know how to write a fucking tune. While most bands might start to taper off once they start getting to their second decade of existence, KALMAH hasn't even flinched. They're kind of like the LeBron James of death metal in the sense that, they've been doing this for 20 years now, and you expect the fall off to come off at any point. But they just keep producing. Like, you expect them to get washed up, but despite being at it for 20 years, they've never left their primes. And if one of your critiques of melodic death metal is that sometimes they kind of eschew the riffs in favor of getting more catchy melodies, this album brings the fucking riffs. I mean, it does still have, keyboards and guitar harmonies and shit, but I mean, just listen to some of this. Up next, King Diamond, the Puppet Master from 2003. And come on, people, King Diamond is the goddamn fucking man, all right? He made my top 15 heavy metal list. He made my best, grunge era, heavy metal, thrash era videos. Because this guy just keeps shitting out quality heavy metal albums, for the most part. And this album is one of those immaculate defecates that the King has blessed us with. And it's another concept album. And basically the concept is there's like this traveling, performing puppet master who has these very like grotesque and lifelike puppets that he can seem to control, without using puppet strings. But the narrator slash protagonist, ever the dirty nunce, he goes to the show and picks up a girl at the show. He's like, yo, what up, Gil? I'm King Diamond. Who the fuck are you? And, they're both remarking, man, it's weird how he's able to, like, control these puppets and shit. And eventually the girl goes missing, and the narrator slash protagonist goes out to find her. And, I'll let you find out the rest of the story.
We will never forget the night we saw the magic in each other's eyes.
And one cool nugget about this album is that it actually features King Diamond's wife. What's her name? Livia Zeta? I believe she's from Hungary. And obviously she voices the narrator's love interest. And I actually just really, really like how King Diamond's character and his wife's character interact throughout the story. And I'm being dead serious when I say this, like all jokes aside. There's a deep cut on this album, a song called So Sad. And, again, not to spoil the story, but there's a part where King Diamond and his wife, they're professing their love for each other. And I'll be honest, I found it very moving. All right, don't laugh. Okay, don't laugh. I'm serious. Okay, I just thought, wow, you know what? That's actually a really, really pretty moment. I found it very moving.
All the memories I keep in here just for me and you. With your image in my eyes, I take you with me when it's time to go. I swear I'll find you. I'll keep on searching to the end of time.
And I'm not gonna lie to you, there are parts when King Diamond and his wife, their characters are interacting, and there are times I'm like, I can't really tell who's who. King Diamond's voice, he can fucking get up there. But don't get it twisted, alright? This album is not a total sap affair, alright? You got plenty of kick-ass riffs throughout this album. Up next, Creator, Phantom Antichrist from 2012. My personal favorite of the post-millennium Creator albums. You also got honorable shouts out to 2001's Violent Revolution and 2005 or 2006's Enemy of God. First thing that caught my ears when I listened to Creator is the frontman, guitarist, songwriter, Millie Petraza. His vocals are very, very sharp, and they have this kind of gruffness to it that really, really suits thrash metal very well. But once again, you have a very, very well-rounded album here. You have lots of melodic moments. Of course, you have lots of thrashy bits. And just a lot of, like, epic kind of chorus moments. It really is the full metal experience summed up nicely into one album. But Creators are titans of Teutonic metal for a reason. They've been putting out the good shit since '85. And if you know anyone that's like, man, thrash metal's a washed up genre since the 80s, ain't done shit since then, tell them to turn the shit-ass sleep token off, give this shit a spin, and while they're at it, go get a fucking job, stop loafing off of mommy and daddy, you sick fuck. We return to black metal. Mayhem, 2019, Daemon, or Demon, or some shit, I don't know. First thing I'd like to highlight with this album, first thing that I noticed when I put on the first song, The Dying False King, was Necro Butcher's bass work. He doesn't just play the root notes of the guitar all the time. Sometimes he'll play something underneath that kind of complements with what's going on with the guitars. Necro Butcher also brings some distorted bass onto the album a lot, which I'm a big sucker for. And I also really like the fretwork of the guitar player, Telok. You know, some of the songs like Agenda Ignis, for example, he's able to make some really cool riffs. And I feel like sometimes he's even incorporating like some major chords or something, but he does it in such a way that it works. You know, just really creates these cool kind of like soundscapes, as I would say. But I really don't think people properly appreciate this album enough. I mean, number one, I'm just glad Mayhem actually decided to do like a proper, you know, straight ahead black metal album. You know, that's not always a given with this band, all right? See 2000's Grand Declaration of War. That album is weird. And not only that, but despite Mayhem's, you know, status as a legendary band, they have a very uneven discography. You know, if you go through what they released that's actually been good, obviously 1993 or 94, you had De Mysteris. Then in 2004, you had Chimera, which was pretty good, very underrated. And then you had 2015's Daemon. So, you know, given that track record, we're probably not going to get another good Mayhem album until the 2030s. So that being said, you know, don't take this album for granted, man. This is some good shit. And to close out my list are my compatriots from my homeland, the Garden State, which should be renamed the Turnpike State, New Jersey, and more specifically the band Overkill and the album The Grinding Wheel from 2017. Overkill have a reputation for being the hardest working band in thrash metal, and reason for that being is that ever since their debut in 1985, Feel the Fire, they've never gone longer than 4 years in between album releases, having released 20 albums since 1985. And the band is just constantly touring. They're always on the road, always playing shows. The main creative forces in Overkill are vocalist Bobby Blitz and bassist Dee Dee Verney, and boy did their hard work pay off for this album.
When no one knows, such a cool revolution fight. Way out there when no one goes, and it's gotta keep moving, gotta keep getting it right. Here's to the piston charge, combustible delight.
I remember hearing a lot of buzz for this album around the time it came out, and at that time I only knew the song Elimination by Overkill, so I was like, alright, whatever, fuck it, I'll give it a spin, see if it's alright. And yeah, Overkill, they brought the riffs, and boy oh boy did Bobby Blitz bring his unique hollering.
Goddamn trouble, never gonna stop. Waited all day till the final culminate to the front of the line, and a parade game, I was eye-to-eye with a two-wheel cop. Goddamn trouble, never gonna stop. Never gonna stop. Ain't never gonna stop.
My favorite tracks from the album are Mean Green Killing Machine, just a lot of fun to say, Goddamn Trouble, The Grinding Wheel, not to be confused with another track on this album simply called The Wheel. And I also really like Red, White, and Blue. It's got this line, give us liberty or we can give you death. Which, I know that might sound kind of cheesy and corny or whatever, but, you know, you bump something like that on the 4th of July, or I don't know how many of you are soccer fans, but if USA is in the World Cup, I'm going to be fucking bumping that if we're playing England, I'll tell you that much.
You can give us liberty or we can give you death. Hey! Damn right. Give us liberty or we can give you death. Damn right. Give us liberty or we can give you death. Damn right.
So that's my video. Now you have your homework assignment for the week. You know, if you're familiar with these albums, then you get a pass. If you're unfamiliar, then you got some work to do. And I'm a very strict disciplinarian, all right? If you don't hand in your work on time, you don't listen to these albums, I might just have to spank you.